If there was a prize for bravest Russian of the week, surely Kursk Oblast acting governor Alexei Smirnov would be in the running. In a very tense National Security Council meeting a few days ago, Mr. Smirnov did what very few others have ever done: tell Vladimir Putin the truth.
В настоящее время ситуация в регионе сложная. На сегодняшний день под контролем противника находится 28 населенных пунктов.
This didn't go down well. Mr. Smirnov wasn't expected to actually say how much land Ukraine had gained in its cross-border incursion, so when he did, Putin, who really doesn't like surprises, abruptly cut him off. But if Ukraine's operation has shown anything, it's that surprise in war is very definitely back on the menu. Better stay away from those windows, Alexei.
Слава Україні!
The ubiquitous nature of drone warfare, we were told, has killed off two hardy wartime perennials: the tank and the art of surprise. The battlefield is now transparent, we were told. Nowhere to hide. It's a graveyard for any lumbering 60-ton beast foolish enough to venture forth. What a difference one lightning, heavily armoured cross-border attack can make. Kyiv's troops now hold about 1,000 square kilometres of land inside Russia. They've seized more ground in the last 7 days than Russia has in the last year. And the Kremlin has declared state emergencies in Kursk and Belgorod Oblasts.
Putin started this. Kick his ass.
Oh, and Vladimir Vladimirovich, FYI, nothing says Blitzkrieg 3-day offensive is going brilliantly, quite like ordering troops to dig defensive positions around your own nuclear power station 2.5 years later.
Росія принесла війну іншим, тепер це повертається додому.
How on earth did Ukraine manage it? Well, unlike other border incursions by pro-Ukrainian outfits such as the Freedom of Russia Legion that were there to grab quick headlines and selfies, this attack was designed to be bigger, bolder, and to stay for longer. Ukraine barged their way over the border through a clever combination of military tactics. They concentrated and focused their limited electronic warfare assets on blinding Russian reconnaissance drones and interfering with the radio networks so vital in bringing order to the chaos of the battlefield. Next, they pushed tanks and other armoured vehicles through this electromagnetic black hole with their path cleared of enemy units by Kyiv's own attack drones. Operating in a similar fashion to the RAF's Hawker Hurricane or US Mustang tank-busting aircraft in the Second World War, but on a much smaller scale. They opted for a sort of micro-air superiority, using drones to dominate a very small piece of sky for just long enough to steal a march on Russian surveillance capabilities and allow the armour to flex its metal muscles faster than Russia could make sense of what was going on.
Усі бачать, що українська армія вміє дивувати.
There's been much speculation about what the attack is supposed to achieve. A land grab ahead of any future negotiations, a bid to show the Russian people Vladimir Putin isn't really the all-powerful provider of security he would have them believe he is, an attempt to force Russia to draw personnel and hardware away from other areas of the front line, or a drive to seal off the Kursk nuclear power plant, thought now to be just 40 kilometers away from Ukrainian forces. All of that might be true, but as Ukraine's operational security, i.e. keeping mum about the whole thing, has been second to none, we just don't know. What we do know, though, is that Russia immediately leapt into action. General Valery Gerasimov, the head of Russia's armed forces, claimed, as per the usual script and with just a hint of comical alley, that everything was under control. The fact 180,000 people were in the process of being evacuated to bijou light communal tents with the princely sum of 90 quid in their pockets didn't get a mention. The next thing Russia did was set fire to a load of tyres at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine that they've controlled since just after the full-scale invasion. This was interpreted as the latest rattling of the nuclear sabre and not mere teenage pranks. It was difficult to tell, though, as Russia's nuclear threats normally come from the occasionally sober Dmitry Medvedev. a man who threatens global Armageddon every time he steps barefoot on a piece of Lego. There's no hiding the fact that regardless of how long this thing lasts, the whole episode has been seriously embarrassing for Putin.
Героям слава!
Judging the Ukrainian army incapable of doing anything more than just cling on to the land they hold and try to push back the meat assaults in the Donbass, Moscow had left most of the border unguarded, a breathtakingly stupid and arrogant decision.
Коротше, для руснявих чепушил, які там розказують, ліплять, що суджа їхня, за щочку беріть і уйобуйте нахуй.
Plus, the Ukrainians know the Russian army is at its weakest when having to react quickly. The rigid model beloved by the Kremlin of top-down leadership that slows all decision-making and stymies independent thought and action knows only mass and attrition. It simply cannot adjust to pace and imagination on the battlefield. Ukraine's tactics and the surprise with which they were delivered may not last for weeks, but they don't have to. They have proven such things can be done. If it can be done northeast of Sumy, why not elsewhere, at another time and place of Ukraine's choosing? In this way, Kyiv's land forces are acting in a similar way to a maritime amphibious strike force that has the ability to range up and down a coastline, the enemy never certain exactly where and when it will hit next. Suppose next month Russian troops on the border of Kyiv Oblast suddenly report a massive electronic warfare and drone attack similar to last week's. Should they ignore it or rush additional forces to the area in case of another surprise Ukrainian border incursion? What a very economical way for Ukraine to keep Russia guessing. Putin should also worry that Ukraine has shown the ability to employ combined arms manoeuvre, whereby all the parts of the military orchestra, the tanks, the infantry, engineers and so on, can be made to operate in tune with each other and not descend into a garbled mess. This will give confidence not only to Kyiv's forces and the wider Ukrainian society, but also to the Western backers, who can see a return on their investment of military hardware, having been shown that this Russian army can be beaten in the field.
І вони сьогодні мають війну, яка поступово йде вглиб Російської Федерації. Чи буде це їх лякати? Так. Чи реагують вони на щось інше, окрім страху? Ні.
Then, against an increasingly loud backdrop of calls for negotiations, Ukraine may, like an Olympic athlete deciding when best to turn on the gas for the final sprint, plan another surprise attack in order to be sitting on a chunk of Russian land just as the ceasefire is called, thereby strengthening their bargaining hand. The sight of American, German and French armoured vehicles rolling through Russia in the Kursk operation has also galvanised the debate around permissions granted to Ukraine to use Western weapons in war. In recent weeks, the moral case for allowing Kyiv to use sophisticated munitions in their existential fight has been brought into sharp focus by the fact Russia is firing similarly sophisticated weapons back at them. But, and here's the rub, a lot of the Russian weapons rely on, or at least use, Western microelectronics that are supposed to be subject to sanctions that still seem to be getting through. Why is Russia allowed to use, or with an incomplete and inept sanctions regime at least not prevented from using, sophisticated Western components in, say, long-range missiles, but Ukraine cannot? The argument is building that either the sanctions regime should be tightened up, or the restrictions on Ukraine's use of such sophisticated systems should be removed. We thought 2024 was going to be a year of consolidation and training for Ukraine. The first invasion of Russia since the Second World War wasn't really on the cards, but it happened.
Слава Україні!
And it can happen again. How many more surprises are there in store for Putin? Defence in Depth is a regular video output by the Telegraph of the big defence stories. If you'd like a daily fix of content about the war in Ukraine, I'd suggest Ukraine the Latest, the Telegraph's podcast. For more defence stories, we've left links in the description below, and if you have a topic you would like us to cover, let us know in the comments. Please do visit our website for the latest updates, news and analysis, or failing that, you could buy the paper